So recently, you have seen many, especially in the West Coast, um, making municipalities, counties, states, districts, making approving new regulations about recreational vehicles, parking in urban areas, but not just in urban areas, in some even public parks. So this video is about, to have a little digging into the, what's the situation for most RV own, people call them, they call themselves van lifers. Van lifers, people who live in their van, and others are, live in recreational vehicles, which was meant basically for people who have, most of the RVs are for retired people, people in retirement, right? That want to, travel the world. Travel, when I say travel the world, I mean you can just, it's not that you can just go to different states, driving your RV and parking, 2 3 days here, there, anywhere you want basically. But some, states and um, counties, especially, cities like San Francisco, LA, and other states, especially the West, I would say that they are, approving, and if they're approving regulations like that or new ordinances, because there are some approval. Think about that. There are some approval of their electors, of their constituencies. I mean, people who are elected, those, public officials, are taking those measures apparently for to protect, or that's, the word protect is like they said, to protect the, the uh, you know uh, good life, the quality of life of the people in their districts. So this, how suddenly has become a problem. I mean, it never was. I mean, if you look back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, people dream. If you are if you are back then, 20 years ago, in your 40s or 30, even 30s, then you're thinking about, retirement, and you 20 years, from there to today's day, right? And there were no, basically, lot of the free. I mean, you can just, go, I mean, pay your down payment for your RV, and if you like hunting, if you like fishing, you like, or just go places, look for places that maybe you never went, that you never visited, like Colorado. I mean, the mountains. I mean, you name the place, or even cities that you always wish you had the time to go, but you never went. So now that, that dream, that romantic view, romantic idea of that's kind of, evaporating, is in a way a little bit, but not that much. I mean, of course there are situations, there are challenges in cities like Los Angeles, I mean, New York, Miami, Houston. I mean, other areas are, I mean, even, yeah, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco. You can name, yeah, we can name many cities here. There are other challenges about homelessness, and homeless people living, in vehicles, like, just sleeping in the vehicles and having a lifestyle now, um, lifestyle of park a car, park a, not even a van. Sometimes there's people say about van life, but it could be just any station or any, almost a car, and you can just sleep there. And, people have necessities. I mean, you have, if you need to go to the bathroom, what you gonna use? I mean, of course, RVs, they have, all services inside. They even cook. They have, different, everything. I mean, take a shower, everything you do in RVs. But now, in the mix of the whole thing, about, with the excuse, of course, of these municipalities, these districts, these, cities, right, to improve the quality of life of to free, they say, they use the whole, we need to free the highways, the areas, the streets of our cities, meaning that they want to free that from, from people just parking there, living there permanently. And the idea of RV, having an RV and do it for traveling, was always a couple of days here. I mean, just like gypsies, right? Gypsies, well, gypsies. In case of gypsies, if you're not familiar with gypsies, a culture, it's a lifestyle in mostly in Europe, but we don't, we don't. We're not saying that in the United States there are gypsies too. The, the people who live in Pennsylvania, there are some, people who, we're not saying the Amish are gypsies, but they have a kind of lifestyle that, they live off the land and travel this, travel different places, and they have a good life, and lawful in a lawful manner. But having a van life, a lifestyle that many people living in their van, they just want to save, and they're not there because they're homeless, because the homeless issue is more complicated. It's complicated. It's been there for hundreds of years, even when there was no issues with the expensive apartments, expensive room. But it's more complicated. Most likely, there is more likely the sun will drop, or the moon will just collapse, and that the homeless situation will resolve permanently, because there's other things involved, like the other things like mental health issues, addiction, and other social issues that, of course, if this has been tackled, is sometimes it's not even about money. About some municipalities have big issue, big budgets to deal with the issue. It's not an issue of giving $10,000 to each homeless person and have a start having new life. It's more complicated than that. So it's not about budget. It's not like a it's not rich and poor situation. It's just that there's a mental health, is addiction, and there are other social issues, a family issue. This has to be a single moms raising kids. There has to be even married couple divorcing. I mean, it's not just a issue of the ghetto, of minorities. This not has to do with issues, ethnicity or minority issues. It's as a whole a society. If you see when they have a profile of the homeless population, there people, middle class people who went, broke, and they had, who had addiction or mental health issue, in and some people, even rich people, went bankrupt, and they are ended up on the streets. So it's not an issue of just a particular thing, but van life, most, van lifers are people who have regular jobs. Their families. They live there because they want to save a little more to have a down payment, to be able to afford a down payment for a house. Housing is, has become so expensive, and nothing to do with different administration, but it's been for the last 30 years. I mean, inflation. I mean, the other economic factors that has been playing to for people to have this kind of life. And now these people who have nothing to do with homelessness as a life or addiction. I mean, these people are regular, just people who just have make that like an alternative lifestyle. They have the freedom to choose. I myself, I never live, like I have a lifestyle with a van or RV, like permanently. Of course, I never say I'm never gonna do it, but those people who have, um, um, trying to save money, and they're saving. That's what they say. They're saving money. They have chosen to live this kind of. They have work regular jobs in different locations, and but now that with this increase in ordinance and regulations and different laws, trying to like make them feel like they're doing something really wrong. I mean, something that, like, very much like a criminal. I mean, like in violation of codes, laws. So they, the you know the idea of ended up in jail, that 20 or 25 years ago you never dream of. If you have an RV and going somewhere, I mean, if there's so many, they're approving so many restrictions in some localities. You can just park for 4 hours, for your RV or your van. I mean, you can park for 4 hours, and that's it. Or even there is one regulation, just in one state they say that only for 1 week you can park for a year, like like you park there, but of course you can split that week in one day, at a time, and come again, go to different state and use another couple of days. But it's amazing, it's crazy. It's just 1 week is almost nothing. The issue here is not about space. I mean, there's so much space, in a country of 330 million people. I mean, some western states, Northwest, I mean, you can name it, Montana, Idaho, so many, those western states, is population, couple of states I was checking, Nebraska, I think one of them, and South Dakota. I mean, barely 1 million people. That's a huge land. I mean, you can drive for hours sometimes, and you barely can find a gas station in 1 2 hour drive. Everything is empty land everywhere you go. I mean, those kind of hours you can drive. Sometimes you only see cows. I mean, I've been in those states. I mean, cows and very much empty. I mean, almost no population. Almost very sparsely populated. So why not going there, right? So, well, even though some of those states are basically approving new laws. I mean, so people don't park in not even public space, a public area, public parks, which what used to be crown jewel for the places that it was a privilege to have. There were of course always park rangers for safety. You always need safety, but there were park rangers, even the local police. But it's to protect people in their RVs, and they bring people in their RVs. They pay taxes, regular taxes. They make the economy moving because some people have stores in these areas. They sales tax, the regular income tax, because some people are making, of course, money working from their vans. I mean, it's not that they're out of society. They're not living off society's money. They're not even out of welfare, not even welfare. They're individuals with good contribution to the society as a whole, paying taxes and using just a little space, a small space like a parking lot, the size of parking lot that is a public. Think about that. It's even, I mean, you're paying for the space, and the city doesn't want you to use from your tax money that little space you're using for your RV. That's amazing. I mean, from one angle that's amazing, but from the other angle, in a way, I sympathize a little bit about the quality. Of course, if there is, and for the quality of life issue of safety, if there is a safety issue, but we're talking about here people who don't bother anybody. They don't. In a lifestyle like this, people usually go to their van 6, 7 o'clock at night, close their thing, their drapes and the curtains, and stay quiet. They behave, and they know they are in a neighborhood, nearby a neighborhood with families, playing, kids playing, and I mean, and the respect, the mutual respect of people living, in these neighborhoods, and they are neighbor too. It's not that they're invading a place, a private locality. No, this is not a private, situation in which they're invading somebody's property. It's just a public area, public space, pay off by the taxpayers' money, and as a taxpayer, of course, people have the right to be there. But of course, with new rules and regulations, they try to locally, pressure them to move to make it impossible almost to live in areas like that. Of course, places like Walmart, I mean, people talk to Walmart, management sometimes. They have an agreement, look, I'm gonna, they have, conversation, of course, these van lifers or RVs, and they may stay overnight. Very much most Walmarts, they have a sign that says no overnight parking, but still around that, people can you can I mean, have, verbal agreement, to stay there to make it clean just for at least a night. Let's say a couple of nights. One night, if you behave well, I mean, people behave very nice. I mean, that could turn another night, another couple of more nights, maybe. Who knows, right? And then it's time to move, of course, right? Because the visual, it creates issues about, even if you're not bothering shoppers and people, even if you park with a van at a Walmart staying overnight, you're still a customer. You can supply your thing from so it's a good PR for the company too. And I'm sure that uh, because of course Walmart is a private company. I mean, they have the right there. It's their parking lot. It's not a public in that case. Now, how about people who are, with this issue of, especially people, van lifers from California? They say, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna just go. They say, well, let's about crossing the border south of the border to Mexico. Millions of Americans, Canadians, drive their vans, and because this is an issue, not just American issue, even Canadians, they have that kind of life. Many Canadians, drive their vehicles, come across the border from the Canada to the United States and drive, around the states, different states, visiting as a tourist, making their contribution to the local economy in many places. But now, some people will say, yeah, why not? If you can do your work. I mean, if you are digital nomad, you can still move and keep moving south, down south, cross the border, which as far as we know, they're not. If you cross to Mexico, I mean, basically they gave you 180 days, 6 months, to with no visa, basically. And in that case, how people say, well, how about safety? I mean, if you wanna live that kind of nomadic life and work from your van. That's if you don't have a regular full-time job. But if you have this digital nomad, or you have a pension. Many pensioners live off their van. Many people with social security checks. What about Mexico? Well, Mexico has, there is no restrictions with that, as far as we know. And people, of course, safety issues. You can just park anywhere and be 100% safe. I'm not saying that. It's just like you have to be mindful of, wherever you park. I mean, you have, let's say you park in nearby a resort, like a beach area, like Acapulco, Cancun, Quintana Roo, all these, coastal, states. The Pacific Atlantic is beautiful, of course, and even in the mountains, you can have a private agreement. Private agreement is like you talk to the, let's say they all have like security guards in front of their places. I mean, even their cameras or those parking areas, those parking places of resort or private areas, right? Private property area. If you have, have a private agreement, like I said, have a conversation saying, like, look, I'm gonna, like, give a little tip to allow you to spend overnight in the localities, and that one night can become, a friendship. Like, friendship meaning you are a friend, a friendly way. If they know who you, eventually who you are, and you are just, visiting the country, you're staying, legally. I mean, of course, you drove your vehicle out of the country from the state. People do that too. I mean, they have been doing it before, but the increase in the amount of people doing that is going to be felt most likely in the next. Is going to be, in the next few days, and there are already signs of people saying that, oh, why not, go in there and just come back for a few days, because after the 180 days you're there, you have to just leave the country again. Now, if you come, when I say some, if it's not resort areas, even hotels, I mean, hotels in the mountains, resort, of course, by the beach, it's very much safe. I mean, there are not too many issues about regarding, violent, crime. I mean, they're cracking down in in illegal activities. But of course, in the mountains, some, places, you can just, have that kind of, even churches. I mean, why not? Churches everywhere have big, huge parking area, and people use, churches. Parishioners who go to church, they just come in, with mass or church service in attendance. But most likely talking to the pastor or the building manager, I mean, the church, the, manager. These are big places, big, huge, areas of the parking. So there are many ideas of, how to, if the situation is too bad, right? And it's apparently it's going to be increasing, because some municipalities in the states are taking the idea of others. They're in a situation of watch and see, right? They're looking at how it's going to work out, right? In one municipality, if things are working out okay, and then of course they want to, implement themselves in their own localities. And that's what's going on. How about, going back to the issue of, if you leave I mean, if you leave the state going to Mexico, other like in Mexico City, of course, it's very much crowded. But why you wanna look for cities that are already overcrowded with a big RV, recreation vehicle? Of course, you can do it, like I said before, in some hotels. Some, you can pay for the, of course, the space that, uh, the parking area where if you're not staying at the hotel by itself, you can still pay a little bit money, which is less than paying the hotel room, of course. But why, if you go to the provinces, the provinces meaning, like, um, in Acapulco or Chiapas State, and all the Cancun, these are part of the province, not specifically, the city of Mexico, which is very crowded, and Guadalajara, the northern state, very crowded. But as you make your way, and knowing, and there are good reviews about people, Americans who live in Mexico, about safety, about, there are good reviews, really. And the result, I mean, the evidence is there. Close to a million expats who live permanently, close to a million Americans who already live permanently in Mexico. And good, I mean, you're saving in food. I mean, of course, you're saving, it's a lot cheaper if you spend $20, $25, to eat in the US. I mean, in the localities, everything is so expensive. You can spend maybe $7 to $8 per day. Like, so you can still save, And the things, I mean, all this saving, you can use gas money. You can still budget it for less than $1,000, just like any other expert. And it could be less than $1,000. In some cases, even to $400 to $500 budget, small budget, because you have your own. You're not paying rent. You're just paying a space, a little space where you can park your vehicle and have the life of your dreams. Basically, that's what. If you're traveling, if you are those, this is mostly for van lifers. Basically, this video is not like a hitting head on the complex issue of homelessness and all, but throw everybody. The part of the issue is throwing everybody on the same basket. I mean, throwing even some people who are hiding from from the police. I mean, people who are like pedophiles. I mean, other criminals who don't want to show others. Of course, they don't want to be, they don't want to be found, and they kind of underneath, they just try to live a life where they're in hiding. That's an issue. It's a different issue, of course, but for regular people who just want to have a decent life, save some money, and they have their work, they have full-time work, paying their taxes. Why not, having have an alternative way of life, so they can improve their life. I mean, they're gonna improve their life, meaning with the savings that they're making of not paying an apartment, expensive $2,000 one-bedroom apartment. They're saving that money to pay a down payment and have a have a regular just life in a suburb, wherever they wanna choose to do. That's freedom, right? So, guys, thanks for watching this video, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe for these kind of comments and more. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, and give us a thumbs up if you like the content. Thanks, and see you next video.